In 2007, Steve Jobs walked into a meeting with AT&T. At the time, Apple had never made a phone. They had no carrier relationships, no telecommunications infrastructure, no experience in the mobile industry whatsoever. AT&T held all the cards. They were one of the most powerful companies in the world. Every other technology company that walked into that building came in ready to negotiate, ready to give up margins, control, and creative authority in exchange for the distribution AT&T could provide. Jobs walked in and told them exactly what Apple needed: full creative control, a revenue share model that had never existed in the industry, the right to keep the customer relationship entirely within Apple's ecosystem. Terms that every experienced person in the room said were impossible. Terms that AT&T's own executives described as outrageous. And when AT&T pushed back, when they told Jobs that those terms were not realistic, he did something that changed the entire mobile industry forever. He was completely prepared to walk away, not as a bluff, not as a negotiating tactic. He had built a product so extraordinary, had developed an internal standard so uncompromising, that he genuinely did not need AT&T more than they needed him. And AT&T knew it. They could feel it in the room. They agreed to terms that no carrier had ever agreed to with any technology company in history. The iPhone launched. The world changed. And the lesson that almost nobody took from that moment was not about negotiation tactics or business strategy. It was about what happens when a man is so completely rooted in his own value that walking away from what does not serve him is not a desperate act. It is simply the natural expression of knowing what he is worth. Welcome to Prime Within. If you are new here, welcome to a channel that tells men the truth that the rest of the world is too comfortable to say. If what we are building here speaks to something in you, please subscribe right now. Hit that button before we go any further. This is the kind of content that changes how you think, and you do not want to miss what is coming every week. Subscribe now. Let's get into it. David Goggins is one of the most extreme human beings alive. Former Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, Air Force Tactical Controller. He completed Navy SEAL training 3 times, including once with a broken leg and stress fractures in both feet. He has run more than 60 ultramarathons, ultra-triathlons, and ultra-distance cycling events. He set the world record for pull-ups, completing 4,030 in 17 hours. He weighed over 300 pounds before deciding to become a Navy SEAL and lost over 100 pounds in under 3 months to qualify for the program. He is not famous because of his physical achievements, as extraordinary as they are. He is famous because of what he discovered in the process of achieving them, and the core of everything Goggins teaches. In his book Can't Hurt Me, in his follow-up Never Finished, in every interview and every speech he has ever given, comes back to one foundational principle. The men who stay weak, stay broke, and stay stuck are not the men who lack talent. They are not the men who lack opportunity. They are the men who have never learned or never found the courage to practice. The single most powerful skill available to any human being. The ability to walk away from the thing that is comfortable, familiar, and safe, toward the thing that is hard, uncertain, and necessary. Goggins calls it getting out of the cookie jar. The metaphor comes from his own childhood, from a place where comfort was the only thing available when everything else was pain. And he argues that the greatest enemy of every man's potential is not his circumstances, not his competition, not the unfairness of the world. It is his own addiction to the familiar, his own willingness to stay in situations, relationships, jobs, habits, mindsets, that are slowly killing him, because leaving them feels more dangerous than enduring them. Here is the first truth about the power of walking away, and it is one that most men have completely inverted in their understanding. Walking away is not giving up. It is the highest form of self-respect available to a man. Most men have been taught, by well-meaning parents, by a culture that valorizes persistence above almost everything else, that staying is strength and leaving is weakness. That if you just try harder, give more, endure longer, things will eventually change. That the man who stays is the man of character, and the man who leaves is the man who couldn't handle it. That teaching has kept more men trapped in bad situations than almost any other single belief in the culture. Think about the man who stays in a job that has been draining his soul for 4 years because leaving feels risky. He tells himself he is being responsible. He tells himself he is being patient. But what he is actually doing, beneath the narrative of responsibility, is choosing the pain he already knows over the uncertainty of a pain he hasn't yet experienced. And the certainty of known pain, spread over years, is always more destructive than the temporary uncertainty of walking towards something better. Think about the man who stays in a relationship that stopped being right years ago. He tells himself he is being loyal. He tells himself he is honoring his commitment. But what he is actually doing is confusing loyalty to a person with loyalty to a situation. A situation that has long since stopped serving either person in it. And his refusal to walk away, which he calls love, which he calls devotion, is often actually fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of the specific discomfort of the unknown that every man who has ever built something real has had to walk directly through. Goggins speaks to this with his characteristic lack of softening. He says that most people are living in what he calls a comfortable hell, a place that is not good enough to be happy and not bad enough to force them to change. The comfortable hell is the most dangerous place a man can be, because it provides just enough relief from genuine misery to remove the urgency that creates transformation. It is the lukewarm water that a frog stays in until it kills him. The man who walks away from his comfortable hell, who makes the decision to leave the job, the relationship, the city, the habit, the version of himself that has stopped growing, that man is not running from something. He is walking toward himself, toward the version of him that has been waiting on the other side of the decision he has been too afraid to make. Now, let me connect this directly to money, because the financial dimension of this principle is one that almost nobody is talking about, and it is destroying the wealth potential of an entire generation of men. The reason most men stay broke is not that they do not earn enough. It is not that the economy is against them. It is not bad luck or bad timing or the absence of opportunity. The reason most men stay broke is that they cannot walk away from financial comfort. And financial comfort at the wrong moment is one of the most insidious wealth killers that exists. Here is what that looks like in practice. A man has a job that pays him enough to be comfortable, not wealthy, not growing, just comfortable. The job is not building him toward anything. It is not developing skills that compound. It is not creating equity or ownership or any form of value that belongs to him when he leaves. It is simply exchanging his time, the most non-renewable resource he has, for an amount of money that keeps him comfortable enough not to feel the urgency to do anything different. That comfort is a trap. It is a trap that looks like security. It feels like responsibility. but it is quietly consuming the years during which a man's energy, creativity, and risk tolerance are highest. The years when the sacrifice required to build something real is most manageable, and replacing them with the slow, steady accumulation of a life he did not fully choose. Goggins talks about what he calls the 40% rule. He discovered during his SEAL training that when his body and mind were telling him he had hit his limit, when everything in him was screaming to stop, he was actually only at 40% of his true capacity. The other 60% was available. It was real, but accessing it required walking away from the story his mind was telling him about what was possible. The financial version of the 40% rule is this: the income level where you currently sit, the comfort level that feels like your ceiling, is almost certainly not your ceiling. It is 40% of what is available to you, maybe less, but the other 60% exists entirely on the other side of a decision you have been avoiding. The decision to walk away from the income that is comfortable and toward the risk that is necessary. Steve Jobs walked away from Apple in 1985. He was forced out by his own board, and most people who tell that story focus on the humiliation of it. The most famous founder in Silicon Valley, removed from the company he built. What they miss is what Jobs did with the walking away. He founded Next. He acquired Pixar for $5 million. He spent 11 years building things that the world had not yet asked for. And when Apple bought Next in 1997 and Jobs returned as CEO, he brought with him not just the technology, but the wisdom and the vision and the emotional maturity that only 11 years of independent building could have produced. The greatest chapter of Apple's history, the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, was only possible because Jobs was forced to walk away from the version of himself that the board could control. Walking away was not his defeat, it was his formation. This is the halfway point of this video, and I want to stop for just a moment. If the things we are talking about today are landing somewhere real in you, if something in what you are hearing is naming a situation you have been living in, I want you to do one thing right now. Subscribe to Prime Within. Hit that button. Hit the bell. Because this channel exists for exactly this moment. For the man who is ready to hear something true, even when it is hard. Subscribe now, and let's keep going, because what comes next is the most important part. Let me talk about relationships now, because the power of walking away in romantic dynamics is one of the most misunderstood and most urgently needed pieces of wisdom for men in the modern world. Most men do not walk away from relationships that are not working because they have confused tolerance with love. They have been taught, again, by a culture that romanticizes suffering as proof of devotion, that staying through everything is what real love looks like. That a man who walks away from a relationship that is draining him, disrespecting him, or simply no longer serving either person is a man who did not love enough or try hard enough. That belief is costing men years of their lives, and it is not even producing the outcome it promises, because a man who stays in a relationship out of fear of walking away does not save that relationship. He slowly poisons it. His resentment builds. His self-respect erodes. His emotional energy, which is a finite resource that needs to be protected and replenished, is continuously drained by a dynamic that is taking more than it is giving. And the woman on the other side of that dynamic does not feel loved by his staying. She feels the weight of a man who is present in body but absent in genuine choice. Goggins has a line in Can't Hurt Me that I want to give you now. because it applies to every area of this conversation. He says, "The most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself." The conversation most men avoid having with themselves about their relationships is the honest one. The one that asks, is this situation making me better or smaller? Is this dynamic one where both people are growing, or one where I am shrinking to fit a space that was never the right shape for me? Am I here because I genuinely choose to be, or am I here because I am afraid of what leaving would mean? That conversation requires a quality that Goggins identifies as the foundation of everything he has ever accomplished. He calls it radical honesty with yourself. Not the honesty you perform for other people, the honesty that happens in the dark, when it is just you and the truth is saying something that makes the comfortable option less comfortable. Let me tell you about a man named Kevin Hart. Before Kevin Hart was one of the highest paid entertainers in the world, he was doing stand-up comedy in Philadelphia to crowds of 30 people, sometimes fewer. He was bombing regularly. He was being heckled. He was at the beginning of a career that most people around him, including people who cared about him, were quietly suggesting he reconsider. He had a day job. The day job was safe. It paid enough. It was the comfortable hell. Hart walked away from it, not with savings, not with a plan that guaranteed success, with the decision made privately, completely, without external validation, that he was not willing to exchange his actual potential for the comfort of a certain mediocrity. He spent years in the uncertainty that walking away creates. Years of building an audience, one show at a time. Years of developing a skill that the comfortable version of him would never have developed, because the comfortable version never needed to be extraordinary, only adequate. By 2023, Kevin Hart had a net worth of over $200 million. Not because he was the most talented comedian of his generation, but because he made a decision at the hardest possible moment that most men never make. He chose his potential over his comfort. He walked away from the safety that was killing him slowly and toward the uncertainty that eventually became his life. That decision is available to you. Not tomorrow, not when the conditions are better. Right now, with whatever you currently have, in whatever situation you currently find yourself. Here is the third dimension of this principle, and this one is the one that most men in the self-improvement space never talk about because it makes them uncomfortable. Walking away from yourself, from the version of yourself you have been for the last several years. The habits, the stories, the identity, the limitations you have accepted as permanent features of who you are rather than temporary conditions of who you have been. Goggins is the most extreme example of this principle alive. The man who walks into a gym at over 300 pounds and decides that he is going to become a Navy SEAL has walked away from himself more completely than most men will ever have to. He has walked away from the identity of the overweight kid from a broken home in Indiana, away from the childhood of violence and poverty that had every statistical reason to predict his failure, away from the specific comfortable hell of a life that was bad enough to hurt, but not bad enough, until that moment, to force the change. And Goggins is very specific about what that walking away required. In Can't Hurt Me, he describes what he calls the accountability mirror, the practice of standing in front of the mirror every morning and speaking the truth to yourself about what you are doing and not doing. Not the comfortable version of the truth, the honest version, the one that says, you told yourself you were going to do this. You did not do it. What does that make you? And what are you going to do about it today? The accountability mirror is not self-punishment. It is the most intimate and most demanding conversation a man can have. It is walking away from the comfortable self-image, the one that tells him he is doing okay, that he is not that bad, that he will start properly next week, and toward the truth that creates urgency. Most men avoid the accountability mirror their entire lives. They replace it with distraction, with the phone and the television and the social media feed and the group chat and the alcohol and the gaming. Anything that keeps them from the specific discomfort of being alone with an honest assessment of the gap between who they are and who they were supposed to be. Goggins walked toward that discomfort every single day. Deliberately, repeatedly, he called the discomfort his teacher and the pain his professor. And the man who emerged from years of that practice, the man who walks into any room in the world today, is the living proof of what is available on the other side of the version of you that you have been too comfortable to leave behind. Now, I want to give you the practical framework, because insight without action is just entertainment, and you are not here to be entertained. The first walk away you need to make is the most private one. You need to walk away from the story you have been telling yourself about why you cannot leave the job, why you cannot walk away from the relationship, why you cannot build the thing, why you cannot become the man. Every man carries a collection of these stories, some of them old, some of them borrowed from other people's fears, and they function as invisible bars on a cage that has no lock. Goggins teaches that every one of those stories has a source, a specific moment, a specific experience, a specific voice that first said, "You are not the kind of person who does that." And his method for dealing with those stories is not to ignore them or to positive think past them. It is to face them directly, to name the source, to acknowledge the fear, and then to act anyway, to do the thing the story says you cannot do, not because the fear has gone away, but because you have decided that the fear does not get to make your decisions anymore. Please take a moment right now, because we are getting close to the end of this video, and I want to make sure you never miss content like this. To subscribe to Prime Within, if you have been watching and this is landing somewhere real, hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this video with one man who needs to hear it today. Your support is what allows this channel to exist and to grow. Subscribe now. The second walk away is from your financial ceiling. And I want to be specific about what this means because most men misunderstand it. Walking away from your financial ceiling does not mean quitting your job tomorrow with no plan. It does not mean making reckless decisions in the name of ambition. It means something more subtle and more important than that. It means walking away from the mindset that your current income is your identity, that what you earn today is a reflection of what you are worth, that the financial level where you currently exist is the level that is appropriate for you. It means beginning today with what you have, to act like the man whose financial life is going to look completely different in 3 years, not by pretending the present is different from what it is, by making the daily decisions that build toward what it will become. The extra hour invested in the skill that will eventually multiply your value. The money protected from impulsive spending and redirected toward an asset. The conversation initiated with someone who is already where you want to be. The business registered. The course started. The first step taken on the path that begins the day you stop waiting for permission to walk it. Jobs, Hart, Goggins. None of them waited for their circumstances to be ready. They began with the circumstances they had, and their circumstances changed because they did. The third walkaway is the one that changes your relationships with women, and by extension, with everyone who has power over your emotional state. You need to walk away from the version of yourself that needs external validation to feel worthy. This is the deepest and most important walkaway of all, because every other form of weakness we have talked about, the financial stagnation, the career compromise, the tolerance of situations that do not serve you, all of them trace back to this one root. The man who needs someone else's approval to feel okay about himself will always stay too long in the wrong places, because leaving requires the conviction that you will be okay on the other side. And the man who does not generate his own sense of worth cannot access that conviction. He must borrow it from the people around him, and borrowed worth is always conditional. It is always available to be withdrawn. It is always making you smaller in exchange for the temporary comfort of feeling chosen. Goggins builds this point through what he calls the callous mind. Just as the body develops calluses through repeated friction, making the skin harder, more resilient, more capable of enduring what once caused damage, the mind develops calluses through repeated exposure to rejection, failure, discomfort, and the specific experience of walking away from what feels safe toward what feels necessary. The man with a calloused mind does not crumble when a woman does not choose him. He does not collapse when a business fails. He does not retreat when the criticism comes, or the plan does not work, or the world does not respond to him the way he hoped. He has been through enough walks away, enough voluntary discomfort, enough chosen uncertainty, that his nervous system has learned what most men's never do, that he can survive the thing he is afraid of, that the other side of the thing he has been avoiding is not destruction. It is growth. That man does not beg. He does not chase. He does not shrink himself to fit a space that was never built for him. He walks away from what does not serve him, cleanly, without drama, without self-pity, and he walks toward the next thing with the specific calm of a man who has done this before and knows what it produces. Women respond to that man differently, not because he has learned a technique, but because the quality his walking away has built in him. The groundedness, the self-possession, the complete absence of desperation is the exact quality that creates genuine, lasting, ungameable attraction. Let me tell you where this all ends. Not with a strategy, with a question. There is a version of your life that is waiting on the other side of every walk away you have been avoiding. The career that actually uses what you are capable of. The relationship that actually serves the man you are becoming. The financial reality that reflects the investment you make in yourself daily. The version of you that exists in the mirror of the accountability practice. The one that has walked away from enough comfortable hells that he looks back at the person he used to be with something that feels like gratitude for the discomfort that built him. That version of you exists. He is not a fantasy. He is not reserved for other men. For the ones who were born into better circumstances, or given better opportunities, or blessed with natural gifts you were not. He is the result of a series of decisions, private decisions, made in the dark, with no audience, with no guarantee, in the direction of your own becoming. Goggins ended "Can't Hurt Me" with a challenge that I want to give you now as the final word of this video. He asked his readers to look at the sum of their life to that point and honestly assess how much of their true potential they had actually accessed. His own assessment, for all that he had achieved, was 40%. He believed he had accessed 40% of what he was actually capable of. What is your number? And what is standing between you and the rest of it? Because I will tell you what I believe is standing between most men and the 60% they have never accessed. It is not the economy. It is not the competition. It is not bad luck or bad timing or the absence of the right opportunity. It is the walk away they have not yet made, the job they are still in, the relationship they are still tolerating, the habit they are still feeding, the story they are still telling themselves about why they cannot, the version of themselves they are still holding on to because the alternative feels like losing something.